You look at your contact list and you realize something terrifying. Every single person who reaches out to you only calls when they need a fix, an emotional dumping ground, or someone to desperately save them. And when you actually need help, silence, absolute deafening silence. You might think your internal radar is just broken. You might think you just have terrible luck with people, or that attracting toxic individuals is the unavoidable tax you pay for being a deeply compassionate person. You set the boundaries. You read the psychology books. You finally decide you are not going to be anyone's emotional sponge anymore. And yet, the very next person who walks into your life is a covert narcissist, or someone who only calls when their life is falling apart. The reason is not that you have bad luck. The reason is not you being too nice. It is that you are broadcasting a very specific silent frequency, born from an unhealed wound, and predatory personality types are documented to target that exact frequency. The reason you keep ending up with the same 5 types of people is not a coincidence. It is an autonomous, unconscious lock-and-key mechanism. According to clinical studies on trauma bonding published by Birch Counseling in 2023, 78% of individuals presenting with hyper-empathic traits find themselves repeatedly caught in relationships with covert narcissists or chronic takers. That is nearly 8 out of 10 empaths repeating the exact same destructive cycle over and over again, regardless of how much therapy they have had. But the data goes deeper. Attachment psychology reveals that this is not just a passing phase or a string of bad choices. These hyper-empathic individuals possess a hyper-responsive mirror neuron system, which physically signals extreme emotional accessibility to anyone in the room. Your brain is literally wired to broadcast your availability. And this pattern of attraction is not just a modern psychological trend. In 1934, Carl Gustav Jung documented that this magnetic pull between two people is actually an autonomous, unconscious attraction between two specific wounds. It is a mathematical certainty. And when that emotional mathematics does not add up, you are the one left completely drained, wondering why you always end up saving the exact people who end up destroying you. In today's video, I am going to show you exactly what is happening inside that emotional radar of yours. I am going to break down the 5 distinct types of people your specific wounds are attracting, where this mechanism came from, how it secretly governs your friendships and relationships, and how it works. And before we finish, I will show you exactly how to identify which of your own wounds is emitting the signal and the one proven counterintuitive way to shut it off for good. Before we start, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. This is highly important for the YouTube algorithm to understand that this content holds value for you, and it tells YouTube that you want to see more videos just like this one. The people you attract are not a reflection of your worth. They are a mirror of your unresolved wounds. For 12 years, I worked as a grief counselor in hospice care in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. I spent over a decade helping people navigate the absolute worst, most agonizing moments of their entire lives. I sat in sterile, dimly lit rooms, listening to the slow, rhythmic beeping of heart monitors, holding the hands of people who were taking their final breaths, and comforting families whose worlds had just shattered into a million pieces. And during that time, I noticed something that completely broke me. I was not just doing my job. I was bleeding out emotionally day after day. Every family I sat with, every tragedy I witnessed, I absorbed it as if it were my own personal loss. I would drive home in silence, feeling the physical weight of 50 different grieving people sitting on my chest. I thought I was just being a deeply compassionate person. I thought my infinite capacity to hold other people's pain was a rare and beautiful gift. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. But the truth was, I was running on a massive emotional deficit. By the time I hit 39 and went through my own devastating divorce, I looked around at my life and realized something horrifying. The people I had allowed into my personal inner circle, my friends, my partners, were exactly like my hospice patients. They were emotionally terminal. They were people who desperately needed saving, who drained me completely, and who had absolutely zero capacity to hold my pain when my own life collapsed. I remember sitting on the floor of my empty apartment surrounded by moving boxes, realizing that I had built a life surrounded by people who loved what I could do for them, not who I was. I was a magnet for broken souls. I would lie awake, exhausted, wondering what was fundamentally wrong with me. And it was not until a therapist handed me a frayed, dog-eared copy of a book called Memories, Dreams, Reflections that I finally understood why. To understand where this comes from, we have to go back in time. We need to go back over 90 years. Tuesday, August 14th, 1934. On that specific day, the world of psychology was undergoing a massive shift. Sigmund Freud was still pushing the idea that all human behavior was driven by repressed urges. But on that Tuesday, Carl Gustav Jung was finalizing the concepts that would become Volume 8 of his collected works, The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche. In that work, Jung revealed a mechanism that completely shattered the conventional understanding of relationships. He stated that an active emotional complex in you constellates a corresponding archetypal pattern in another person. The pull between two people is an autonomous, unconscious attraction between two specific wounds, not a conscious choice. It is not about love. It is about a complex calling out to a complex. Let me translate that into something you can see every single day. This concept works exactly like a tuning fork. Imagine you're standing in a large, silent room filled with hundreds of different tuning forks all resting on tables. If you strike one tuning fork and there is another fork in the room calibrated to the exact same frequency, that second fork will start vibrating on its own without anyone ever touching it. It is an invisible, undeniable physical resonance. You are the tuning fork. Your unhealed childhood wounds, your unresolved traumas, your hyper-empathy, they vibrate at a specific frequency. And when you walk into a room filled with people, you do not attract the healthiest person. You do not attract the person who will treat you best. You attract the person whose brokenness perfectly matches your frequency. Complex calls to complex. Your wound is sounding a silent alarm, and only the people who feed on that specific wound will answer. And the problem does not stop here. There is a part of this that most people never realize, a part that makes this dynamic incredibly dangerous. This invisible resonance does not just attract random toxicity. It attracts 5 very distinct, highly recognizable types of people, and I guarantee you have met at least 3 of them. Let's look at the first one. The first type is the narcissist, and I do not just mean someone who is arrogant or someone who takes too many selfies or someone who likes to talk about themselves at parties. I mean the covert narcissist who seems to smell you from a mile away, the one who slowly and systematically dismantles your reality. Rosenberg documented this precise dynamic in his 2013 research on what he called self-love deficit disorder. He proved that people carrying this deficit are magnetically drawn to narcissists because their opposite childhood attachment wounds form a complementary lock and key bond. Think about what this means for your life. You were taught very early on, perhaps by a demanding parent or an unstable household, that you only have value if you are useful, if you sacrifice yourself, if you put your own needs last. The narcissist, on the other hand, was taught that they are the center of the universe and everyone exists to serve them. It is a perfect, catastrophic fit. The narcissist requires an endless supply of validation, and you require an endless project to prove your worth. The account does not close. You give 100%, they take 100%, and the emotional mathematics never balances out. Your wound of feeling unworthy of unconditional love is the exact frequency that brings the narcissist to your door. They do not target you because you are weak. They target you because your empathy provides an infinite fuel source. And because you are an empath, you keep trying to pour love into a bucket with no bottom, thinking that eventually they will become full and give some love back to you. They will not. The tuning fork is vibrating, and they are simply answering the call of your own deepest insecurity. But here is where it gets complicated. You might be thinking, well, I do not date narcissists anymore. I learned my lesson. I can spot them a mile away now. But wait until you meet the second type, because they do not look toxic at all. They look like a noble cause. The second type is the emotionally unavailable project. This is the person whose emotional distance, brooding silence, and deep-seated trauma you completely mistake for a challenge. You look at them and you think, if I just love them enough, if I am just patient enough, if I create a safe enough space, they will finally open up and realize their magnificent potential. You see the good in them that they cannot see in themselves. Why do you do this? Why do you invest years into someone who gives you nothing but breadcrumbs? A profound clinical study from 1996 explained it perfectly. Early psychic trauma builds a protective self-caretaker archetype in your psyche. Because you were forced to save yourself, or forced to be the adult for an unstable parent when you were just a child, you developed a compulsion to save others. You unconsciously seek out predatory or closed-off external figures because trying to fix them is your psyche's desperate attempt to finally resolve your own original trauma. You're trying to heal your past by fixing their present. You think you are saving them, but your unconscious is actually trying to save the child version of you. You look at this emotionally unavailable person, and you project all of your unfulfilled childhood needs onto them. If I can just get this incredibly distant person to love me, then I will finally prove that I am lovable, and it never works. The project remains unfinished, the walls stay up, and you remain utterly exhausted. You become their therapist, their mother, their savior, everything except their equal partner. And the moment they actually start to heal, they usually leave, because they do not need a savior anymore. And if you think you have finally stopped taking on projects, just look at your text messages right now. Look at who has been calling you late at night. Because the third type is hiding in plain sight. The third type is the chronic taker, also known as the energy vampire. This is the person in your contact list who treats you like a 24-hour emotional ATM. A major psychological framework from 2017 cataloged these distinct toxic profiles, noting that drama queens and chronic victims are specifically drawn to hyper-empathic people because empaths lack a protective emotional filter. The chronic taker only calls when they need a fix. They will call you at 2 a.m, dump hours of their chaotic relationship drama or workplace conflicts onto you. They will instantly feel better, and they will walk away light as a feather. Meanwhile, you are left carrying the heavy, suffocating weight of their problems. You absorb their anxiety into your own nervous system, and the moment you say, "Hey, I am struggling today, I am having a really hard time, and I need someone to listen," they suddenly have to go. They disappear into thin air. They have an excuse ready. "Oh, my phone is dying," or "I have to run this errand." They are attracted to your wound of conditional utility. Deep down, you believe that you must earn your space in people's lives by being endlessly useful. You are terrified that if you stop solving their problems, they will stop calling you altogether. The chronic taker senses this terror, and they will use you until there is absolutely nothing left. They do not want a friend, they want an audience. They do not want a solution. They want someone to bleed out with them. And it is exactly here that your own history enters the story in a way you might not want to admit. Because the fourth type does not just take your energy, they demand you take responsibility for their entire existence. The fourth type is the permanent victim. This person never changes. No matter how much brilliant advice you give, no matter how much money you lend them, no matter how many times you bail them out of their self-created disasters, their life is always a tragedy, and absolutely nothing is ever their fault. In 1998, James Hollis wrote about this extensively in the Eden Project. He showed that interpersonal attraction is governed by complex meeting complex. Unhealed childhood wounds get projected onto the other person in a desperate search for wholeness. When you attract the permanent victim, it is because of your own desperate need to be the savior, the magical other. You take on their emotional chaos because you subconsciously believe that if you can just stabilize them, you will finally feel stable yourself. You completely abandon your own boundaries to save them, projecting your own deeply buried need to be saved onto a person who has no intention of ever getting better. They do not want to be healed. They just want an enabler for their suffering. And you, with your boundless empathy, are the perfect enabler. You think you are doing God's work, but you are actually preventing them from ever facing the consequences of their own actions. And every time you rescue them, you reinforce the exact dynamic that keeps you trapped. There is a mechanism that explains why this keeps happening, year after year. But before I show you the final type, you need to understand that this fifth type is the most insidious of all because they use your greatest virtue against you. The fifth type is the guilt-tripping controller. They do not control you with anger or shouting or physical threats. They control you with guilt. The exact moment you try to set a boundary, the moment you finally gather the courage to say, "No, I cannot do this right now," they look at you with deep betrayal and say, "After everything we have been through, I thought you actually cared about me. I thought you were different from everyone else who abandoned me," and instantly your stomach drops. You feel like you are committing a crime by protecting your own energy. They are attracted to your core fear of displeasing others. They know that your hyper-empathy makes you intensely sensitive to causing anyone pain, so they weaponize your own conscience against you. They turn your empathy into a prison. They make you feel responsible for their happiness and guilty for your own. You end up apologizing for having boundaries. You end up shrinking yourself to make sure they never feel uncomfortable. And the tuning fork vibrates violently because this is the exact frequency of childhood emotional neglect, where you learned that keeping the peace was more important than keeping your soul. Look at the raw mathematics of what is happening here. Let's look at the arithmetic of your daily life. You invest 80 hours of emotional labor into someone. You sacrifice your sleep, your peace of mind, your financial resources, and your boundaries. You give them your best advice, your deepest compassion, and your relentless support. And the return on investment is absolute zero. The math does not close. It never closes. And if you think this is just an isolated issue for you, a personal failure, look around. Globally, in every country, in every culture, millions of hyper-empathic people are burning out, stepping away from their careers, and isolating themselves completely because they think the whole world is toxic. The system trained an entire generation of empaths to be caretakers, to turn the other cheek, to give until it hurts, and then the system fed them to the wolves. In every era of history, we have seen this pattern. The caregivers are depleted by the takers until the caregivers simply collapse. So, we have perhaps already understood the size of the problem, and perhaps we have already understood where it came from. But the problem is not going to stop here unless someone does something entirely different, unless you do something entirely different. If you have made it this far into the video, you are already in a small, distinct group. The majority of people out there do not even know this mechanism exists. They simply live the effects of it, day in and day out. They keep changing partners, changing friends, moving to new cities, and wondering why the new face has the exact same old toxic behavior. They think it is just bad luck. You are past that now. You already know where it comes from, how it works, and what needs to change. The only thing separating knowing the truth from transforming your reality is taking action. The solution is the exact opposite of what the convention teaches. Society tells you to put up thicker walls, to become cold, to stop caring, to isolate yourself in a fortress of cynicism. But that does not heal the wound, it just barricades it. The real solution is what Jung called integrating the shadow. You have to look at the exact wound that is emitting the signal. If you attract narcissists, you must heal the wound that says you are unworthy of love without endless sacrifice. If you attract projects, you must grieve the childhood where you were forced to be the adult. You do not change the people you attract by fighting them off. You change the people you attract by changing the frequency of your own tuning fork. Once the wound is healed, the complex dissolves. And when the complex dissolves, the magnetic pull vanishes. The toxic people will still walk into the room. They will still exist in the world, but they will look right past you because there is absolutely nothing left in you for them to latch onto. You stop being a food source for their dysfunction. And it is exactly here that I need to talk to you about the next step. It is why we created the Empaths Mirror community. We do not have a magic pill to sell you today, but we have a dedicated space for people who are doing the real work of integration. If this resonated with you, if you're tired of being the emotional dumping ground for the world, I want you to click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to join our inner circle. This is where we take these concepts and turn them into daily practice. The spaces for genuine transformation are rare, but this combination of Jungian psychology and empathic healing is something you will not find anywhere else. The doors are open for those ready to change their frequency. The only question that remains after all of this is simple. Are you going to continue abandoning your own boundaries, hoping that the next broken soul will magically heal themselves and finally give you the love you deserve? Or are you going to heal the wound that keeps calling them in and become part of the minority that actually breaks the cycle? I am going to leave it right here. A big hug and goodbye. But before you go, tell me here in the comments. Which of the 5 types do you attract the most? Write narcissist, project, taker, victim, or controller down below. I want to see which frequency is the most common among us.